Crazy Santa Racer is a free online flash game which takes on the form of early arcade-style racer games. Chances are, if you've played video games for 10 to 15 years, you've almost certainly played a game that is pretty much exactly the same as Crazy Santa Racer. It's the kind of game where you control your vehicle from behind at a third-person perspective and must maneuver it through traffic by positioning it into any one of 3 lanes. To boil the gameplay down to its most simple terms, if your vehicle's in the left lane and a car is coming towards you in the left lane and there's no car in the middle lane, shift to the middle lane until there's a car coming towards you in the middle lane, in which case you have to then shift either to the left lane or the right lane, depending on which one is more safe. I can honestly not tell you what the first version of this game was because it has pretty much existed forever, and by forever I mean since video games have existed, this game type has basically existed. You can see it echoed in games like 1978's Street Racer for the Atari 2600. The version shown on the screen at the moment would probably be a better example if my paddle controller was still working. And this style of game even takes up about 200 of the 256 games on my handheld Brick Game console. Actually, this Brick Game console is surprisingly relevant because I'm fairly certain I got it from a workplace Christmas party. So thank you, Workplace Christmas Party Santa, it still works about 16 years later. The style of game is a really simple concept, it's relatively easy to program, extremely easy to pick up, understand and play, and if done correctly, it can be extremely addictive. However, since the 70s, racing games have come a fairly long way, and even as early as 1982's Pole Position, you can see that this style of reflex-based traffic dodging kind of game had really begun to evolve, with better graphics, more precise movements rather than the simple 3-lane setup, and more control options. For instance, Pole Position had gear shifting, and more objectives than simply dodging cars at an ever-increasing speed. Perhaps one of the closest relatively modern renditions of this genre would be the Burnout series, which, though it has come a long way and is almost unrecognizable from its original, the idea of dodging through traffic as fast as you can still remains a core feature. Of course, in Burnout you can also take out your opponents by crashing them into said traffic, but you get the idea. However, while the home console style of this game has developed quite far, as you can see by my Brick Game, around about in the 90s, the original style of it found its new home in handheld consoles. And these days, that tradition still continues in a form because most of this style of game that can now be found will turn up as a mobile phone game, and I believe, bringing it full circle now, Crazy Santa Racer is also available on your phone. But I can't say that for certain because my phone is old and I'm playing this on the PC. So with all that background information out of the way, let's start talking about Crazy Santa Racer. Firstly, the graphics. I've always maintained that graphics are not the most important thing. I mean, heck, I enjoy games from all generations, whether they be the picture-perfect graphics of the Nintendo 64 or the more representational graphics from the Atari. But if you're marketing your game as a Christmas game, it has to at least look recognizably Christmassy. So is Crazy Santa Racer Christmassy? You bet your buns it is. We have snow, snowmen, Christmas presents, Santa, reindeer, everything you need for a Christmas game. It's all done in a rather cute cartoony style, and it all goes together rather well, giving across a good Christmas vibe. However, unfortunately, it does rather fall apart when it comes to the picture quality and animation department. Firstly, the picture of the city in the background that changes depending on what stage you're on is noticeably artifacted, and it looks like it's a badly stretched JPEG, because I'm assuming it probably is. Considering Flash, the program that this game was made in, uses vector graphics, not pixel graphics, this could have been very easily avoided. Also, considering that Santa's sleigh, all the power-ups and the other cars are all vectors, I'm not really sure why they didn't stick to this for literally the biggest things on the screen, when if they were to stick to vector graphic, it would have completely removed the issue. That said, while the background's blurriness is annoying, it's not that noticeable when you're playing the game because you're concentrating on the cars, not the background. However, what is noticeable, and unfortunately a little bit distracting, is the cottages that come towards you, giving you the depth of field. Their draw distance is unfortunately a little bit too close, so instead of it looking like they're coming from the distance and slowly getting closer, it feels like they appear out of nowhere and then come and get closer, and every single time one appeared, I couldn't help but notice it. However, it should be noted that if you're playing this game on a mobile phone device, it's probably likely that your screen's going to be considerably smaller than my desktop screen, so both the blurriness of the background and the draw distance of the buildings is probably considerably less noticeable. Also, the animation in the game is sort of lacking, with Santa's entire move cycle being what appears to be 3 frames on loop, and when Santa changes lane, it's just the same thing but on an angle. Even Pole Position had a separate animation frame that gave a 3D effect, but it's okay, and once again, if it was on the mobile, it would probably be passable. Overall, in regards to the graphics, while I am being rather critical, the graphics in truth are more than acceptable for this style of game, and the Christmas feel is definitely there. It's just that I feel that if all you're doing is mainly giving a graphic overhaul to a game that has basically existed for 40 years, you could probably have gone a little bit further into the graphical development of it. It's not bad, but it could have definitely been better. As I mentioned while talking about the graphics in the game, this game has power-ups, which are sort of cool, but also sort of unnecessary, and at times actually work to the detriment of the game. Since I recently spent a lot of time on aeroplanes, and therefore spent a lot of time playing those terrible in-flight games you can get on your screen, I've discovered something that appears to be a universal truth. If someone is, within the last 5 years, making a rehash of an old arcade-style game, what they'll usually do to set apart their version of it from the rest is by adding in power-ups. However, unfortunately, more often than not, these power-ups destroy the perfect balance that was the simplicity of the original gameplay. And that is, indeed, the case for Crazy Santa Racer. The power-ups in question are the present, which repairs the sleigh, the stockings which make you move faster, the clock which gives you additional time to pass the stage, and the candy cane that allows you to fly. Overall, for the most part, these were all completely pointless. Firstly, at no point was I ever even close to running out of time to pass the stage, so there's no point having a power-up that makes you move faster, and by the same nature, there's no point having a power-up that gives you extra time. And secondly, you can also score points by picking up points, which means if you pick up the candy cane that makes you fly over all of these points, meaning you actually miss out on scoring points rather than it giving you a benefit. For pretty much the entire game, I was trying to actively avoid picking up the candy cane because of this very reason. The addition of a health bar to the game though, and the power-up that allows you to repair your sleigh was actually a pretty cool thing to add, and I'm actually entirely on board with this one. I think this power-up system would have worked much better if it had implemented a sort of Mario Kart style thing to it, where you picked up the power-ups, but you actually chose when to use it. That way you could choose to use the speed boost to make you go faster if you were running out of time, or you could choose to fly if you were heading towards some very congested traffic. As it stands though, with the system functioning the way it was, I wasn't really much of a fan of it. I did constantly purposely pick up the power-up that makes you go faster, but this wasn't because I was going to run out of time, but because I found the game to be too slow. The entire game is pretty much reflex-based, so if it's going too slow, there's not really much to do in the game, and there's no real challenge. There was the occasion where it got a little bit hectic, but it wasn't until something like level 24 until I actually found any difficulty. This is far too late in the game for a difficulty increase, and they really should have given us a harsher difficulty curve. Although once again, possibly in the game's defense, I did think I got a bit of lag, and I can't imagine that was the game's fault, and it was probably the website I was playing it on, especially since it seemed to occur every time an ad loaded. So really, if you do want to check out this game, and there is actually a mobile version in existence, I would say definitely check out the mobile version instead of this one. But if there isn't a mobile version, then check out this one, because in that case, this version would be the only one that exists. It's not the best version of this type of game that exists, but it's also definitely not the worst one. In truth, if it wasn't for the fact that it's Christmas time, I would probably be sticking to my brick game version. But because it is Christmas time, it's definitely a passable Yuletide distraction. So if you enjoy dodging traffic and carting presents, check out Crazy Santa Racer. And as always, until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more Christmas stuff, subscribe to Channel Grim and Grin. And also click the button on the screen because it will take you to our Christmas playlist, which is a playlist of our Christmas stuff.